On Thursday morning, Lynn and I got the anchor up and left the Calabash River astern as we continued our journey south down the ICW. The big event on Thursday was the rock pile. Most of the ICW is mud and very user-friendly if you stray into shallow water. However, in the Myrtle Beach area, there was a section of the ICW that had to be blasted out of rock, and this is informally known as the rock pile. The deep channel is not all that wide, and it is not all that uncommon for boats to damage their propeller if they get out of the channel. On the day that Lynn and I passed through, we had the ICW pretty much to ourselves. We stayed in the middle of the channel and had no problems. Once past the rock pile, the southbound ICW boater gets a non-stop view of outrageously expensive Myrtle Beach houses. South of the Myrtle Beach area, we passed an area with homes that seemed to be built only inches above the waterline. It seemed like a crazy location to build houses. That afternoon, Lynn piloted us into an anchorage in the Waccamaw River next to Oatbed Island. The water in the anchorage was 30 feet deep, which was deeper than most of the water we had passed through that day. You could either have lots of scope on the anchor line, or you could make sure you didn't drift into your neighbors when the tide changed, but not both at the same time. Friday was kind of a fun day. We didn't have far to go, and it was great weather. We went way up Jericho Creek to find an anchorage hidden in the marsh. The spot we anchored in was not very wide, and the current switched directions every 6 hours. So we did what is called a Bahamian moor. You basically deploy two anchors, one upstream and one downstream, then position your boat between the two. In theory, your boat should not move very much when the current direction changes. We spent a lazy afternoon listening to the ducks and admiring the peacefulness of the marsh. There were two ways to get to Georgetown from our anchorage. One option was to continue to follow Jericho Creek south to the great Pee River, which joins the Waccamaw River not too far from Georgetown. But there's a Route 17 bridge clearance that was a little lower than my anchor light, which means I would have had to put the mast down. So we retraced our steps from yesterday back into the Waccamaw River and then headed down to Georgetown. You can see the difference here in detail between the Navionics app on the tablet below and the Garmin chart plotter above. These shots were taken as we navigated through the twists and turns of the narrow Jericho Creek. There was some fog on the water, so we got the radar going as we navigated our way into the River Walk Marina in Georgetown. During our stay in Georgetown, we had some great food, visited a grocery store, watched a small parade of Christmas boats, and got to see Santa as he lit up the official Harbor Walk Christmas tree. We finally left Georgetown late Monday morning and had an uneventful though pleasant trip down to an anchorage in Whiteside Creek, just north of Charleston. Lynn piloted the boat into the anchorage in Whiteside Creek. I sent the anchor down for the night. For dinner, Lynn made a meatloaf and mashed potatoes dinner, one of the better meals to come out of my galley in a while. Tuesday was a sunny day with high drama as we headed into Charleston to tie up for a few days. The first drama was due to an area of shallow water that had been reported on the internet. The sailboat ahead of us was also concerned about the shallow water, and he was using his VHF radio to check with boats who had just passed through there. We decided to follow the sailboat since his draft was most likely greater than our draft. As it turned out, the shallow water was not a problem for us. We stayed in the middle of the channel and had no issues. The second half of our high drama day concerned tying up at the Charleston City Marina. As usual, the current was ripping through the marina at a pretty good clip. The dockhand also directed us to a slip at the end of the mega pier. There wasn't a long enough space to fit my boat, and we were dangerously close to my new neighbor tied up behind us. There was so little room that the bow of my boat ended up sticking out past the end of the mega pier. The Charleston City Marina is one of the places where the big boys tie up their big boats, and Lynn and I enjoyed walking the docks and gawking at all the super expensive holes in the water filled with money. Lynn and I also had a nice walk through town, which has a lot of history and a lot of cool buildings. By Friday, Lynn had returned to his home in Texas, and my old shipmate Dave had come aboard from his home in Virginia. Dave had helped me get my boat back to Norfolk at the end of the Lake Champlain trip, and he would now accompany the boat on the last part of my southbound trip to Brunswick, Georgia. We also had some drama on this day as well. Active Captain warns that a 6 to 7 knot current in Elliott Cut is not uncommon. As we passed through Elliott Cut on Friday morning, the current was strongly against us. We were just crawling along. Just as we were getting to the west end of the cut, a big cruise ship came around the corner, going downstream in the other direction. Fortunately, we were able to stay clear of him by hugging the shoreline. I guess that situation would have been a good argument for having AIS on the boat. After a day of nice traveling weather, Dave and I anchored in Togoodoo Creek. We would remain there at anchor for a few days while some wind and rain and flooding passed through our area. I was very lucky to get a shot of this alien spaceship before it lifted off and disappeared into the sky. Have you ever heard that old saying, red sky in the morning, sailors take warning? By Monday, the wet, windy weather had finally left town, but the air behind the front was fairly cold. We did our best to stay warm as we traveled through a few light rain showers, but by the time we reached Beaufort, South Carolina, I know that I was feeling a little bit chilled. We tied up for a couple days at the Beaufort Yacht and Sailing Club. It was absolutely wonderful to plug into dock power and fire up the electric heaters on my boat. Dave and I spent Tuesday gathering groceries, then having a great hamburger lunch downtown. After lunch, we went house gawking, and there was no lack of cool old houses to gawk at. On Wednesday, our last full day in South Carolina, we moved the boat down the ICW to an anchorage in the Wright River, just north of where the ICW crosses the Savannah River near the town of Savannah, Georgia.